of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Good morning, peace be with you. And as you see from the title of the program, next to my name the title is Exploring Nursi's Pastoral Theology, the Case of Prisoners. And the topic overlaps with my colleague's presentation, Muhammad Sayyid Muhsin, yesterday. So I apologize if there will be any repetition. So forgive me for this. And also I am grateful to all of you for being part of this program, and in particular our friends who are part of the study tour. Thank you for being patient and a good listener. So this is basically this project is part of my dissertation. I am hoping that it will be part of my dissertation. I am still working on it to put it together, so it's really quite raw. So this is the beginning and yet to be improved. So I want to start with these remarks that this is really just the first step. And I am hoping to receive some constructive feedback in order to further this study. So how I came to this topic, it's I should acknowledge some of the professors here in this room, because this is basically an inspiration from their work and their words. And one of them actually, Dr. Alatas, I remember 2 years ago we had a conference at Yıldız University in Istanbul, and a person from the audience asked a question, why are you interested in Nursi? He raised the question, and Professor Alatas' answer was that because I am interested in Nursi because of his interest in human condition, that he dedicates so much time and writing to human condition. So this is one thing that, again, an inspiration. The other thing, this year in March, there was a panel on Nursi at VTS at the invitation of Dr. Ian Markham. And actually one of the the result of the workshop was to pay a little bit attention to the pastoral theology of Nursi. The other things, again, I heard from Dr. Colin Turner many times, in different lectures, that today, in many cases, you see in the Islamic discourse, there is too much attention to jurisprudence, to political Islam, and then there is a lack of pastoral theology, pastoral theologians. So these are, again, I would like to acknowledge these professors for being, a motivation for this project. So the term, as you see, the term that I use is pastoral theology. As you well know, I am still struggling with the term, and is this a Christian term? Whether we should use an Islamic term or Christian term. As you know, the term comes from the word pastor, right? It's a Latin word, means shepherd, basically, it's a meaning. And in the Christian terminology, it's usually is known as a spiritual overseer, a spiritual guide, and also pastoral theology is known as theology of moving hearts, moving the souls, theology of touching and comforting in the Christian context. And I am aware that there will be some Muslims who would have reservation for using this particular term. And my point is that it would make this project more accessible if I use a term which you will see in the English audience will be very familiar. So this is my intention, but I am still open to your suggestion. We'll see how I will end up. You know, this is a long process, as you know, the dissertation project. And the other thing, just a similar case, the chaplain. The word chaplain is also, you know, again, is a Christian term, and it's widely by Muslims, you know, by Muslim chaplains in the United States. So I will say, so maybe it will be something similar, or we'll see that with this term we will go to a different direction. So one thing to mention that you will see in my presentation, I will not come with a conclusion, because again it is still in the process, but maybe I will hint something, but there is yet many things to be done. So again, if you remember from some of our discussions, whenever there is a project, a research, then you need to deal with your question. What's your problem? What I want to do, what I want to come with as an answer to a particular question. So one of the questions, again, I mentioned that even like in the English-speaking world, you barely see any work, like intentional work on pastoral theology, especially in the USA. You know, if you go, you barely have any work by Muslims really to answer the questions of Muslims. The other thing I would say, especially in the US context, the Christians have been very successful in terms of bringing theology and other sciences together, to merge them. For example, I know a couple of professors at Harvard University. You know, they are theologians, they had a secular education, but also they are priests. So they combine this part. And again, I barely remember anyone, you know, a Muslim, you know, you see there are Muslim professors who are grounded, but a Muslim who has, you know, who is imam and traditional education, but also a success, you know, teaching at an Ivy League university. We barely have this, such examples. And so I hope that, you know, this project can pay a little bit attention to this question. The other thing is, if when you look at the major publication in English and Turkish on Nursi studies, again there is too much attention to, you know, Nursi's view on politics, especially in the recent development. If you consider the recent developments in Turkey, Nursi's understanding of jihad and social issues, and basically descriptive readings of Nursi's writings. So you don't have any major work on Nursi's pastoral work. The other thing is there is a great need for the chaplaincy, Islamic chaplaincy literature. Again, I work as a chaplain for 4 years. Basically, you don't have really any work just to deal some particular in a systematic way. The other thing that I want to mention is that it seems to me there is a disruption in Islamic literature in terms of bringing mere theology and pastoral theology together, to merge them. I mean, historically, if you think of Ghazali's work, there is a pastoral aspect of his writings, but it seems that with the modernity there is a disruption, and Nursi to some extent revives these aspects. So then, to summarize, these are just some questions and problems I am dealing with. Just to summarize what is my question, and with Professor Farid's words, what is my masala is, can we construct a pastoral theology from his long life experience in prison and exile? So this is really the problem, the question that I will be dealing with in my project. And the other thing is, I think the project is also, the topic is relevant. Just an example today, the 20% of prisoners of the world, they are in the United States. And actually, the percentage of Muslims who are in prisons, the percentage is higher than the percentage of Muslims in the United States in the larger society. So there is, a large Muslim population in the prisons in the United States, and again, I am hoping that to some extent this will be kind of a start to deal with the question that the problem of prisoners. Another question, another thing that I will be dealing with, why I am engaging Nursi with this question, why I am bringing Nursi into this conversation. As you know, one of the most important practical aspects of Nursi's writing is dersanes, faith-sharing sessions. And just to give an example, for example, just if you think of Saturday, just yesterday, in more than 500 places, people, they came together and they discussed, they faith. They talk about God. They share a discussion in order to further their belief. Just yesterday, in 500 houses. And you may think, really, what is the cause of these people? Why they come together? My understanding is that it is not just to seek for knowledge. The purpose of coming together is not to seek or to be more knowledgeable, but rather there should be something different. I will be dealing with the question, but it seems there is something more than this. It seems that the sessions, these faith sharing sessions, are comforting, relieving for these people. That's why it attracts them. It cannot, because you see people from different segments who will not be in knowledge at all. It's not their concern. But still they come to these faith-sharing sessions. That means they find something that helps them, that is an instrument, a tool for them, like a life-saving boat in this modern and secular environment. So that's why I think Nursi's work becomes relevant in pastoral theology. The other thing, in many cases in his writing, Nursi, he regards his risale, his writing, as a doctor. For example, he uses the Turkish words yara, hastalık, illet, ihtiyar, zayıf, wound, sickness, needy, weak, remedy, and he considers his risale as a vehicle of the Quranic pharmacy, eczahane Quraniye. So then, and he also hints to some extent in many places the role of his risale as a pastoral work. And then the other important element in a research, in a project, is methodology, how I would approach this work. Because in order to understand, really as we say, to clarify, to make it more accessible, then you need a methodology, how I would work. So my methodology will be based, I don't know if you heard of the Stanford prison experiment. This is a study by Philip Zimbardo and his team conducted in 1971 at Stanford University. This is a study. So what happens actually, they basically advertise. They say that we will pay $15 a day if you be part of this study. So they randomly chooses, not randomly, those who are stable, mentally stable, healthy. They choose them, 24 of them, and half of them become guards and half of them become prisoners. It is, how do you say, a fake. Simulate prison experience. And what happens actually, if you watch one of the classical movie, Shawshank Redemption, basically they try to bring everything in these major evil scenes in the movie. They bring all of them into the experiment. And what happens actually after 6 days, even though it is an illusion, right? It's not real. They experience it, but at the end they did not commit to any crime. But in the course of the time, they feel as a prisoner. But actually after 6 days, they had to dismantle the project, the study, because the individuals part of the study, they could not bear the situation. So they had to leave the study after 6 days. So it's supposed to be 2 weeks. So basically, my methodology will be to bring this study into conversation with Nursi and his students' prison experience. Because I think, my understanding that it seems Nursi's experience and in the prison is a little bit different. And the study does not fit into Nursi and his students of experience in prison. As you know, Nursi, around 30 years, either in exile or in the prison, in different parts of modern Turkey. So this is the kind of, will be my tool in order to read Nursi's experience, their methodology. And you see, again, from Nursi's writings, from letters, you see there is it seems that there is a very positive reading of their experience in the prison. It is very positive, and it seems that to some extent it makes them stronger in their faith. So they don't run away. They don't, again, as you see in the Shawshank Redemption, they don't find a way to get out. So it seems for them, the experience in the prison was spiritually rewarding. So it is a different. And the other thing, it seems that their experience of prison is not consistent with the study that's conducted at Stanford University. Again, so there is yet many things to be done, but it seems that their faith, their firm belief, faith was a major device for them to be healthy and to stand firm in a prison. So their faith in God is... So now I will go into the context to give some examples. One case study, for example, and this happens during Nursi's imprisonment in Denizli, one of the city that he spent quite a lot of time. And according to one of his students, Süleyman Hünkar, actually, so they are together in the prison, and there are around 400 prisoners in this prison, in these places. And most of these folks in the prison, they committed major murders, major crimes. And during their experience in the prison with Nursi, they would always see a fight between the prisoners. And according to, we are told that during Nursi's time, no, he said not Nursi's time, Hünkar narrates that from 1939, the year when he was put in the prison, Nursi's student, until 1943, 18 people were killed in the prison because of the fight. Imagine. So it is a very chaotic place, terrible place. And in 1943, Nursi, with along his 126 students, he was also put in the prison. But in the course of time, it seems from his writings that there has been a great transformation in the prison. And he gives an example. He says that during the prison time, after Nursi came to the prison, there was a person who committed to major murders, and he would come to Nursi with an insect, and he would ask Nursi whether he can kill this ant or not. So because of actually Nursi's, they would read together the Risales, and at some point there would be a major transformation. So as you know, in many places in his Risale, he refers to the prison as the school of Joseph. Yusuf, Joseph. What does it mean that it is it becomes, because of the transformation, it becomes a very precious place for them. So then he transformed the prison experience into a spiritual retreat. This is really important to keep in mind. Spiritual retreat. And just to give some examples, so what is the DNA of Nursi's pastoral theology in prison? What is the DNA? What are the really important aspects of his pastoral theology? One is that first, before he preaches, he lives up to religion. He does not preach what he does not practice. His piety, his devotion has been very attractive for his disciples and students. And what is interesting that Nursi would also, like his students, he would read his risales. That's also a unique case. For example, according to one of his students that he read, he himself, he is the author, right? I don't know, Ian, how many times you read your one of books? Every day? Okay. So you can beat Nursi in this sense. So he would, for example, he read his treatise on the resurrection 40 times. So apparently, his own writing for himself even was very spiritual, very spiritually rewarding. So, in order to liberate the mind and the heart of other prisoners, Nursi first liberated himself. And it reminds me of some remarks from Nelson Mandela actually. When he left the prison, he left with this, he remarks about his time when he left the prison. Nelson Mandela quote, "As I walk out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I would still be in prison." So to some extent, Nursi first, he gets rid of the challenge and then extend kind of the comfort to his disciples. So he starts with himself. So this is the first important aspect of his theology, his pastoral theology. The other thing that I think that it really gives some clues about Nursi's pastoral theology is, in one of his letters he refers to a frame that hung above his bed, and then during the day he would look at this frame, and he would look at it and he would contemplate on this frame. So what is written on this frame? It goes like this: if you want a friend, God is sufficient. Yes, if He is the friend, everything is friend. If you want companions, the Quran is sufficient. Indeed, for in the imagination one meets with the prophets and angels, in it observes the events in which they were involved and becomes familiar with them. If you want possessions, if you want to be rich, if you want property, contentment is sufficient. Yes, one who is content is fulfilled, and one who is fulfilled finds the blessing of plenty. If you want an enemy, the ego, your lower self, the side that keeps you away from God is sufficient. Yes, one who fancies himself as is visited with calamities and meets with difficulties, whereas one who is not fond of himself finds happiness and receives mercy. If you want advice, that is sufficient. Yes, one who thinks of that is saved from love of this world and works in earnest for the hereafter. So what's interesting when at the end of this letter, Nursi reflects on the story of Joseph. As you know, the Quran refers to the story of Joseph as the most beautiful story. And Nursi focuses on the conclusion of the story. He doesn't go into the details of the story. And as you know from the biblical version, both the biblical and the Quranic version, the story is very painful, right? Initially, Joseph is betrayed by his brothers, right? He's sold into slavery, and he was slandered, right, by the governor's wife, imprisoned unjustly, and then this all good days start, right? Then he's unified with his family. He becomes the minister of finance in Egypt. So all the beautiful things, and then the story ends with the verse "Tawaffani Musliman wa lahaqni min as-salihin." So, oh God, make me die as a Muslim and join me with the righteous one. So the point Nursi makes that usually it's interesting, when you read a novel, if the novel ends, a beautiful story ends with a sad news, with the sad conclusion, it makes us sad. Nursi makes a point. He said, well, this is not the case in Joseph's story, even though it ends with the sad news, because at the end of the story, Joseph longs for his dad. He says this case still makes the story very beautiful, because Joseph was well aware of the fact that the real happiness comes after life, after war. So that's why, from Nursi's point of view, that reflecting on that is a great advice, to be a good person, a righteous person. The other thing, just briefly, Nursi, again, in one of his letters, he talks about different ways. He notes that there are various ways that lead to God. There are different ways that lead to God. And he says, the best ways, in our case, in my way, Nursi's way, which are taken from the Quran, is, in Turkish, is aciz, fakr, shefkat, tefekkür. What are these? Impotence, to accept, to acknowledge your impotence. Poverty, your weakness, to accept your weakness. And compassion, to seek for compassion from God. And tefekkür, contemplation. So Nursi remarks on this, that this is a way, these four elements are the way to lead us to make us better servants, or to bring us closer to God. So I think this is my presentation. I still have 2 minutes, but I can reserve it for Professor Ferry. Don't need it? Maybe they will need it. But thank you for your attention.